we've been talking about the different stages of dementia, and sort of transitioning from one stage to the next can be really quite challenging for people, especially as it sort of things fluctuate, things might suddenly change. How do people cope? How do people manage those changes and transitions?
Well, it's interesting you should mention that. It's something I've only learned through this kind of knowing people over many years and seeing them deteriorate from one stage to another, and realising that it is an actual pinch point for families and they need extra support at that point. The carer will have been looking after the person. So let's take Jane Tolman's 3 stages, and the first one is independent. So they've managed to work out a plan of how to live together happily and with some slight adjustments, but an understandings. And life is going along reasonably easily, and people will say, I'm actually not having a bad time. This is actually going quite well. I think I'm managing. It's, luckily my husband or wife is placid and, happy, and it's all going fine. And then suddenly something changes and the risk enters the picture. And what has not been a risk before, so they would have said before, my husband would never have dreamed of going out of the front door without telling me. Suddenly we discover he's lost, he's gone. Where is he?
Yes.
Suddenly we have to think differently now. And they've got to then look at the house. Is it safe? What are the risk points? What other things? And I think that all we can do in that situation is just to support, maybe on a one-to-one if necessary. It can be extraordinarily difficult because it means picking up the burden, another burden. You think you've got it sussed and then suddenly it isn't.
So education then is key throughout.
Yes.
So we don't want to look too far into the future, but it's important that we can understand some of the challenges that might lie ahead, and also to have an understanding of what to do, how to jump in to alleviate these crises, so things don't hit that crisis point. And it can be all too easy, I think, sometimes to say, oh, perhaps you'll be all right, or we'll leave it, or we don't need to look at this yet, put things off.
I think we all have a tendency to do that. I think it's a perfectly sensible way to live our lives in the 21st century. But on the other hand, if you leave things too long, you'll have no choices left. You have to, it's that point. This is this argument about the stages. Is it a good thing or a bad thing to know what the stages are and what the likely symptoms are of the stages, and whether we're better knowing or not knowing. It's a fine balance.
Yes.
Because not everybody will have every symptom, that's the point. But it is very, very tricky and emotionally charged for everybody, probably.
Having those conversations is really difficult, and finding that language. So, and I suppose that's why a course like this is really important, support for memory, because we're trying to encourage couples to learn the language together and to have those discussions as a couple. So the person with dementia and the care partner learning how to talk to each other and how to communicate each other's needs and wants. And then to plan together for the future. And I suppose once you've got that plan written down, then you can put it in a drawer and it's there for when you might or might not need it.
Yes. Do you remember that we had somebody years ago who had dementia, and his son was a neurologist?
Oh, yes.
And he sat his father down with his mother, and together they discussed what the future care might look like as his needs would change. And I think they got him to sign, I think they took minutes and got him to sign this sort of notes of this meeting.
Right, yes.
So that they could use it in future when he could no longer remember what he had agreed as to what he would want, what help he would accept, what help he would need. And I think that sort of thing, that's a counsel of perfection. The son clearly had specialist knowledge, but I think it is so important to plan ahead. And this is where our approach, which is very much about sharing information in a variety of ways, through sort of straight talk teaching like we're doing now, but also through informal discussion groups with other carers and sharing what they've done, tips and tricks that they've learned along the way. And I think nobody would ever say that this is easy. It is a roller coaster, and you're up and down, and it just goes. It just does need infinite flexibility and fresh resources from somewhere.
Yes,
doesn't it? There's just a quote that's been introduced to me that I would like to share with you because I think it really works with this topic.
Okay.
It's from this book, The Leopard by Lampedusa.
All right.
If we want things to stay the same, things will have to change. I had a lecture from my son about this when after my husband died and my health deteriorated and I needed extra help in the home. And that they were talking about this. He said, "Mum, it's just like it says in The Leopard. If we want things to stay the same, things will have to change."
Right, yes.
And I think that applies to everybody. It's not just about dementia, but I think we have to, nothing is forever. We have to accept it.